We're talking. Getting you what you need to know. Power Talk. Weekdays 9 a.m. to noon on Power 98.7.
It's 22 minutes to 11 right here on Power 987. This is a Power Talk, of course, with me, Bongi Gwala, in for Mbuyiseni Ndlozi this morning. We're together till 12 noon, and then it's Power Lunch with Pabi Moloi on the other side of that until 3 o'clock, and then it's Power Drive in the afternoon. All right, so let me look at this story that is such a sad story. And our hearts really go out to the family of Ekurhuleni municipality's senior auditor, Mpho Mafole, who was gunned down on Monday. It was about 10 minutes away from his home. He was the city's group divisional head for corporate and forensic audits. So that should tell you something. Police are still investigating, and the motive is unknown at this point. This senseless murder of Mafole reminds us of how exposed and vulnerable and unprotected even are the upright, ethical, moral, honest and hard-working government officials who are trying their best to defend this democracy. They want to implement clean governance and fight corruption. His killing, by the way, is the latest in a string of high-profile hits targeting fraud and corruption investigators, forensic accountants and whistleblowers. We are reminded of brave officials like City of Joburg fraud investigator Benedict Sithole, who was killed last day in his car. Babita Deokaran, a corruption whistleblower within the Gauteng Department of Health, was also assassinated in a hit-style killing outside her home in 2021. Sindiso Makaqo, former Secretary General of the ANC Youth League, again killed for raising issues about corruption. We speak now to John Clarke, advocate for whistleblowers. John, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be with you again, but in very tragic circumstances.
Very tragic indeed. Very tragic indeed. We don't know what he was dealing with. We don't know what he was investigating. The police are saying at this stage they don't have the information to say exactly this is what happened. But what do you make of this latest assassination? Because, I mean, according to the cousin, only the driver's window there was shattered. So it is somebody who knows the job of assassinating people, who was just targeting this person, a hail of bullets, but only targeting the driver.
That's right. Yeah, no, clearly another hitman who's been brought in. But just to say to the family, and I didn't know him, obviously, I didn't know their family circumstances, but speaking as a social worker, I just want to say, so important to go for trauma counseling, for therapy, so that you can somehow process this tragedy. I just want to say that up front. And not only just them, but the staff, his colleagues and people like that, because, you know, the tragedy is I've learned something from my reading and reflection. Pain that's untransformed becomes pain transmitted. And this is the harm that's caused by these sorts of violent actions, is that it conditions us into the suffering, and that we end up projecting that pain on others. So it's very important that people see this as an opportunity to kind of go for healing counseling, so that we don't constantly have the one generation to the next, this pain recycling.
No, you're right. It's very important, and I'm sure the family would, in one way or the other, perhaps receive that, or themselves as the family come together and counsel each other. But it's important to get professional assistance in that area. Why are, and we are not saying he was a whistleblower here, but we know that they are exposed, as I highlighted, you know, people who are fighting corruption, people who are in the forensic audits, for instance, people who are working in the area of auditing. I mean, we know in municipalities, even the Auditor General's officials, staff, are being threatened for requesting documents. Why are whistleblowers still exposed in this particular way in this country?
Well, I would see it as, you know, a friend of mine talks about thugocratic machine, that the system is basically run, there's all sorts of fancy academic terms we could use for it. But essentially, the system has become pathological, and the culture of corruption is so endemic that good people don't blow the whistle, don't do anything. They're not corrupt themselves, but they are paralyzed by this thing. And of course, it serves very much the interests of the thugocrats to basically create a culture of fear. And that's really my assumption is now, after 5 years working with whistleblowers initially, and I worked with them because they didn't sign up for this. I'm a social worker. I kind of signed up for it. You as a journalist, you know that you're going to get some, scrutiny. But these folks didn't. Now, what I'm finding more and more is that things are so bad. I've got forensic auditors, people that are just caught in the crossfire, coming for help, who are just doing their jobs, who then get retaliated against. Murdered in some cases, but I'm now dealing with people who are suffering legal retaliation. The Fort Hare corruption scandal. Now, I don't want to say too much about it because the whole thing has been mired in such controversy, but, with the way the NPA has mishandled that, I've now got data points from people within that system which are so obvious to me that the system is kind of coming down and again and scapegoating them, because they are showing up the people in the system who should be doing the job, that they're not doing the job. So it's like the tall poppy syndrome. They cut off their heads. They can't bear the thought that good forensic investigators are bringing things to the surface, not necessarily to expose only corruption, but to expose incompetence in the system by people that are just there for whatever reason, through patronage, through deployment, who are just not up to the job. And they then get insecure and they start using other means, not quite so severe as murder, but my clients, I have to tell them, get yourself a bulletproof vest, make sure you look after yourself, don't travel alone. I've just come back from Eastern Cape where I was looking at the whole story of the Craddock 4 inquest and reliving that thing from 40 years ago. And we're having to go back and relearn some of the tactics we had long forgotten. We've got to bring them back on board to make sure that there's vigilance. I'm busy writing a story of Molly Blackburn, who was one of the friends of the Craddock 4, drawing such inspiration from it. And I just want to say that, Bong, is that there are stories from our history that can inspire us, encourage us, that we don't have to yield to what these guys are wanting us to do, is to basically roll over, stand our ground, make sure that the tragedy of what's now happened to Mpho Mafole is not left without meaning, that we can use this as a spur to enable us to actually redouble our efforts to break that culture of corruption that has become so endemic.
But how, John, how do you stand your ground when in some instances, even your own colleagues are selling you out? They are saying Bongi Gwala is the one who is standing in the way of us accessing this contract, this tender, for instance. And you know that the information about you comes from your colleagues at times. That's number one. And number two, working in the public sector, and you know that this is prevalent in the public sector where people are killed for doing their jobs. How do you stand your ground faced with those realities?
Well, I mean, that's why I think I would like to say I've been helpful to people who are in that situation, because I've given them a safe space which is absolutely trustworthy. You need a safe space where you can confer with people and test your assumptions, test to what extent this is paranoia at work, to what extent it's a self-thing, so that people can fully own their own stories. I mean, it sounds like a bit of a sort of a lateral thing, but I say to folk, if you own your own story, deal with your own issues, your fears, the dark secrets that you might have, get them out of your system, because the villains will actually find your weak spots, and they will then exploit you and manipulate you from that. So it's about being a full and whole and healed person, that you can actually know that you're confident, and that you also dealt with death as being a constant reality. Death is not something that happens in the future. It's something that's ever present. It's omnipresent. And I think part of what people need to do, and that involves a spirituality. It involves, that's the only reason I keep going, is that I have a very lot of time in contemplative prayer, in trying to work through from grievance to grief, and then trying to find things to be grateful for. And there's so much to be grateful for. And then to use those little gifts, because I have to say, I really do believe from my 40 years in this work in this country that God loves us. There is a grace that's available to us in the darkest of circumstances. And Viktor Frankl survived the concentration camps. And he always said, between stimulus and response, there's always a space for choice. So don't let them rob you of that choice, that you have a choice. And the choice you can make from it is that I'm going to choose to make sure that whatever circumstances and adversity I'm in, I'm going to make meaningful.
All right.
I'm going to find a meaning in it all, no matter what comes. And people that resort to violence and all these things are people that have lost a sense of deeper meaning to their life. I mean, nobody turns up, becomes a hitman because they want to, in the sense that they look for it as a career option, unless they're really sociopathic. They do so because they just don't feel they've got any other choice, and they get preyed on by the sociopaths. So we all have a choice. We don't have to wait for the government. We don't have to wait for anybody else to give you permission. You can choose that you're not going to become internalized victims.
Okay. John Clarke is my guest, and he is the advocate for whistleblowers. I would love to hear your views as well on this particular matter. I'll come to KG shortly. John, we do have legislation that should be protecting whistleblowers. I mean, the Protected Disclosures Act of 2000. But when I look it up, it is designed to deter and detect wrongdoing in the workplace. So it is protecting the system, not necessarily the people who find themselves in the mix of that. It is an early warning mechanism to prevent impropriety and corruption within the public sector. It ends there. It's got other elements, but it then protects the system, the government, the entity. What about the human beings who are in the mix of this?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's a real hobby also, man. 2 years ago, I had a run-in with John Jeffries, a former Deputy Minister of Justice, and said, why? At that stage, I was saying, why is it already waiting 3 years and you guys have not overhauled the PDA? He said, oh, no, it's up and it's going to be happening. Don't worry, by the end of this year. 2 years later, over 2 years, we still have not got an oath thing. And I think it goes back to that phagocratic machine philosophy theory that I have. It's not in the business interests of the crooks and the corrupt to have anti-whistleblowing and to protect whistleblowers. So it's bad for their business. So we've got to make sure that there are people in government and parliament and all sorts of levels who have just got to keep holding their feet to the fire. I mean, I've been talking to the Minister of Agriculture, and I must say, John Steenhuisen promised he would help me get a particular whistleblower that had been in the agricultural sector to do something about it.
Yeah.
That was over 6 months ago. And I'm just saying, but John, why is it not happening? There's a kind of all sorts of hidden other agendas and things which people distract you from getting onto this job. I can't think of a more important thing for all political parties in the government of national unity to commit to, and that is to ensure that legislation is overhauled immediately. Before the end of this parliamentary session, there needs to be something on the table. I know the president's promised that, but let's see.
There is the whistleblower protection bill, and I don't know whether it's been introduced to Parliament. And I know that last year they were working on it. As you say, John Jeffries, you had an issue with him. Brian in Centurion, hi, good morning.
I think in this conversation that we are having, one thing that we are missing is the person who has paid for the contract killing.
Yeah.
Often when they catch the perpetrators, they never talk about who out there in the normal world, in inverted commas, went into the abnormal world to go and acquire the services. And I think those are some considerations that they may be to acquire those services. That will I be caught? Will I ever be caught? And I'm worried that this is likely to continue because we never catch the guy in the suit who's smelling a fragrance and who's living in a hilly suburb, or whoever that the actor may be. When are we going to get them in the dock with whoever that may be going to do the contract killing? Because contract killers are still going to be there. The issue is the buyer of the service.
It's true. For as long as we have the system that we have, for instance, you hear about construction mafias, you hear about water tanker mafias, and all sorts of things, and of course auditing and all those kind of things. And we hope that once the whistleblower protection bill becomes an act, it will then categorically say what must happen to those people who are buying the service of the contract killers, Brian. Is that what you're saying also? Because it needs to be clear.
Yeah, but we don't need a bill. We need the police to go and ask the person who's done the work, that who hired you, or to trace it through the banking systems and whatever that it is. We need those.
You see now,
the bill will come later.
The bill, yeah. You see now, that's when they have caught the perpetrator. What about preventing it? Making sure that it doesn't happen. So the bill should assist us do that.
Absolutely agree with you. There's two sides to it, after and also before.
Thank you, Brian in Centurion. KG in the East Rand, hi.
Good day, and thank you for having me on. I just wanted to say that, Minister Lamola already in February 2023 promised that there were mechanisms that were being put in place to protect whistleblowers. I think we need to get Minister Kubai back on to come and explain what has the department done to protect whistleblowers. There's a Protected Disclosures Act for public servants.
Yes.
When the system who feel victimized when they bring wrongdoing, obviously, to the surface. And having invoked it myself in my previous role, it didn't protect me. If anything, Minister Lamula was the one that dealt with me. Now, I'm saying something, fundamental needs to happen here in order for people to feel safe enough to bring what has become endemic corruption to the surface. And unfortunately, the very politicians to whom protection has been sought are heavily involved in the wrongdoing. Thank you.
And KG, so sorry, before you go, I don't know how much further you want to tell us about that particular story of yours. But if you do, please continue. But if not, it's okay. We understand.
But I mean, it's in the public arena. I'm quite happy to talk about it.
Yeah, so what happened?
Yes.
And how did you resolve the issue?
My other name is Khatazo Tlakuja. I was the DG of Public Enterprises. So I raised the wrongdoing in relation to SAA. But what happened to me? I mean, I lost my job and my career, and obviously with everything that goes with such an incident. But I'm saying, I think that the civil society need to come out very strongly now to say, government, you have to put the resources behind people who bring wrongdoing. If it means that they have to be relocated to be protected while the wrongdoing is being dealt with, that must happen. Because unfortunately people are afraid to lose their livelihoods and their families if they dare to do the right thing. And
the delay in the Whistleblower Protection Act. I mean, we know that at the back of the State Capture Commission, there was a clear recommendation that there must be this legislation. We must amend the Protected Disclosures Act of 2000 to make sure that it is fresh, it is lively to the developments in the country right now, emanating from the state capture and many others up to today. How far are we in that regard, KG, and what needs to be done to fast track that?
Like any other commission that has been set up, implementation of recommendation is not happening. That same happened if there's under commission and its recommendations with regard to whistleblowers. And really, the relevant ministers must brought forward, and they need to explain this, because we can't continue to lose good people from the public service for doing the right thing. I mean, it's the toll on those families. It really has to resonate with someone. Someone has to have empathy for what is happening here. But you don't see it, unfortunately.
And we thank you very much for your contribution. Yes, John, come through.
I mean, I just want to applaud you. I forget your name, but I mean, why do I do this job? I'm a privileged white male, who's past my sell-by date in my 60s. What keeps me going is to meet people like him, who I've been supporting, like the Martha Ngoyis and Tilo Leles and all these whistleblowers who testified at Zondo. It gives me hope to get up in the morning because they are standing their ground. And of course, and I believe that we are moving. The more we have people like that standing their ground, it shows that there's an alternative culture that we're beginning to create, and that it's become something which an institution must prize is high degrees of ethical accountability. That must now become, and people must start imitating them. And gradually the old culture will die because it's not sustainable. It leads you downhill into a race to the bottom. It's only people such as you described, DGs, who have done their job despite them losing a job, because I sense he's at peace with himself too.
All right.
And that's always significant to me, that people who do that, they're at peace themselves, might not have a job, but at least you have your own conscience that you
John Clarke, we thank you very much for coming through. Highly appreciated. Advocate for whistleblowers.